What's up everybody, my name is Jacob and I'm here today to make a hopefully short video on fuel starvation and how I tackled that on my 2014 BRZ here. We're going to be going over how I added a lifter pump to the passenger side of the tank to feed the driver's side pickup to combat fuel starvation on the track when we're running E85. Alright, so before we get into that, a quick disclaimer, and that is that I am not an expert, so just keep that in mind while you're watching this and potentially following along. It's my first time taking a crack at any type of custom fueling modification like this, so just keep that in mind. I'm only making this video because when I was trying to research this topic for my own uses, I couldn't find any forum write-ups or videos or anything showing people how to do this, so I'm just trying to give back a little bit. But I'm not a YouTuber, it's my first time making a video like this, so just keep all that in mind when you're watching. And finally, just modify at your own risk. If you're making fuel changes on a car that you're going to take to the racetrack, just try to be safe with it. All right. So before we get into it, we're just going to have a quick overview of what we're going to do before we just jump straight into the photos. So this is a BRZ fuel tank, and this is the driver's side and this is the passenger side. The general problem is that on a left-hand turn, all your fuel sloshes over here, and your fuel pump and your fuel basket here runs dry of gas. So your fuel pump sits inside this basket. This basket is what we want to keep full of gas so that your fuel pump has enough gas to get through that corner and send gas to the engine. So there is a factory designed fuel scavenging solution from in every car already, and we're kind of going to be reusing that as much as possible. So there is a little outlet here, and there's a line that is already connected to that and is routed across the saddle tank and is attached to a passenger side hanger here in this opening. So I believe that's called the Venturi system, and that's designed to scavenge fuel from the passenger side already, but when you're using 85, it's no longer enough. So my plan is basically to force feed that line fuel, since it's already expecting gas delivery through that. And we're going to be using a low pressure transfer pump because I thought that would fit the application pretty nicely. So that is the gist of what we're doing. We're going to have it behind a switch so we can turn it off and on as we need to. So here is a brief shopping list. I'll put these in the description. You're going to need some submersible rubber fuel hose. So I used the 8mm ID here because I knew that would fit the pump that I got. These are the hose clamps I selected. And here's the fuel pump. So this was a great budget option, and it's designed for the use case. So I thought it made a lot of sense. It's physically small, so it's easy to mount where we're trying to mount it. And the electrical demands are a lot lower than something like another driver side fuel pump, for example. I wanted to wire this on the cigarette adapter circuit, which I think is a 10 amp circuit, so I thought that this would fit comfortably within that threshold. And if I wanted to use a bigger pump or something like an identical driver's side sending unit, my electrical demands and subsequent wiring requirements would get a lot more complicated, and I wanted to try to do something as simple and least invasive and easy as possible at first, and then maybe ramp it up from there if it didn't work out. But so far so good, and I'm happy with my results on this. So jumping into the how-to, so here's everything laid out on a table. You're going to need some electrical stuff from the hardware store, and yeah. So here's the specs of the pump if you're curious about that. Here's the electrical connections that I used. I used spade connectors and tap splices, but that might vary a bit for you. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. I got some 14 gauge wire, definitely overkill, but whatever. You're going to need a lot of ventilation on this project. The fumes can start to get to you a little bit. I found a respirator here to be really useful. So I use my fan. Generally just try to stay ventilated, and you're going to want to run your gas level as low as you can so that it's less messy. I did all this work with my gas light on and it worked out fine. So here's the passenger side access panel for your gas tank. You're going to want to take that off of there, get this all cleaned up, and use a screwdriver and a mallet to loosen this up. A spanner is the right tool for the job to take these lock rings off and on. So maybe invest in one of those, but I didn't have one. So when you take this out, just be careful not to be rough with your fuel level sensor. It's kind of delicate. And then here's the other end of that Venturi line that we're going to be reusing. So this is the line that's already routed across your saddle tank and conveniently attached to the driver's side fuel pump basket that we are trying to keep full of gas. So you can set that aside for now and take that filter off. This is where we're going to attach our new hose that's attached to our new pump. All right. So this is the sending unit here, or excuse me, the passenger side fuel hanger here. This is where we're going to be mounting our stuff to. So here's me testing the fuel line on the Venturi hose. The 8mm ID hose ended up fitting pretty nicely, and I was really happy how that worked out. So here's how I mounted this pump on this hanger. I guess you could do this a couple ways. I felt like this was the sturdiest. So yeah, essentially, do this and attach your new hose, obviously, and we'll have a few more pictures here. So I just secured this to the post with a worm clamp and let it rest here on the little platform, so it felt nice and secure. It felt really solid to me. So if you copy me, just make sure you don't have any like pinching going on here. That's worked out fine. Just make sure you test it with the whole assembly like compressed, like you can see I'm doing here. And then you got to power it. So for lack of any better ideas, I just drilled a hole and ran my wires out. And the very last thing I did when everything was wired up and I was basically done, the last step was to JB weld around here. And I have no leaks. So far so good. So that's maybe a little tacky, but it's worked fine for me. And yeah, at this point, you can pause on these pictures if you want, but at this point you're ready to install. So yeah. So first thing is attach the other end of your hose to the Venturi line. Make sure that's nice and snug. And then you're ready to Tetris this back in here. And the thing to watch out for is to try to make sure your level floater here is not impeded and has free motion to float up and down. If you allow your new hose to get in the way of your floater sensor, you can get an incorrect fuel level reading in your fuel gauge in your dash. Mine's been fine, but I know that's possible. So if your fuel level is wonky after this install, that's probably what's been going on. So just make sure these rubber gaskets aren't misaligned, and then make sure this lock ring is good and tight, because if you don't get these tight enough, they will back off on you at the track, and when everything gets hot and starts vibrating and stuff. So yeah, make sure this is good and tight. If you have a spanner, the torque specs for these are out there, and I'm sure that's the best way to do it. But I have had to come back in here and tighten these up before, so heads up on that. Now you're ready to run your wires for positive and ground, and this is where my install is going to deviate a little bit from what you got going on. I apologize I can't show you the 100% guide, but I'm sure that there are other videos out there on how to run switches and tap into circuits and stuff, and you can use some other videos in conjunction with this one to give you the whole picture. So I do apologize. I would show you, but my car came with this already, so I was just working with what I got. So this switch is tapped into the cigarette adapter circuit there, and it was installed to power this AccuSump here. And so my plan was to just tap splice into the power and ground already there, and so that way my AccuSump and my lifter pump is on one switch, which has worked out great. I just turn that on as I'm going on the track, and turn it off when I start my cool down lap, and I run it for about 20 minutes at a time, and everything has been great. All my connections are cool to the touch. I haven't blown any fuses. Everything seems to be happy. So yeah, I apologize for not being able to show you everything, but it's just working with what I had here. So here's me tap splicing into there, and if you've done everything correctly, you're good to go. A couple more tips for you. This is just a warning. These like access panel here, These panels, the adhesive under them are like, I guess it's one-time use or something. It just never quite sticks the same. When you go out on track, it'll feel fine, but when everything gets hot, the adhesive will start to get too soft and it will fail, and these will slide down a little bit and make a big mess. This is my driver's side. This is from where I installed the Verus Fuel Door a year ago, and I had to tape it in the middle of a track day, and it's just stayed there. So it's not the best look, but you know, it happened on this one too, but I caught it a lot earlier. So just a heads up for you. If you wanted to make your install a little bit cleaner than mine, I did manage these cables a lot better after this photo was taken. They're all nice and tucked away now, but you could run them outside this grommet perhaps and follow along this harness to the center console. Just a thought on how to make this, you know, maybe a little bit cleaner. For me, I wasn't really worried about like, you know, OEM showroom quality execution. I just wanted everything to be safe and work well, and everything's been fine. So that pretty much wraps it up, you guys. And for a little bit of a conclusion, how did this work out for me? Would I do it again? Would I recommend it, etc.? For me, this has been a huge success. So before I did this install, this modification, I could not use E85 at the track at all. So I was fuel starving at like 7/8 of a tank because I'm forced induction. But even before I went forced induction, I would fuel starve at around a half tank when I was naturally aspirated on E85. So, you know, but once I went forced induction, I effectively could not use E85 at all. I would fuel starve before I completed one session on track. So I effectively could not run it. I had to use 93 all last year. So now I can use it, and I can get down to a half a tank now before I fuel starve. So now that's not perfect, but it's very manageable. You know, I was topping off at the track anyway in between sessions, so that's nothing's really changed for me there. And yeah, so it's, for my purposes, it's been a huge success. You know, I wasn't ready to take the plunge on something like a surge tank. So, you know, for being $100, this was a super successful change in my opinion. You know, I've met all my objectives. I can still use the car like I was yesterday. I kept all the new connections and kept all the gas inside the tank, so I didn't bring any fire risk into the cabin. I can still use my trunk to carry stuff, which I do. And honestly, it's worked super well. And the only thing that could be better is if I could get below a half a tank. So, you know, maybe with some ideas from you guys and some feedback, maybe we can make that happen. Maybe in the future, you know, I can come back with a 2.0 and show an improved system. But, you know, for now, all the tracks that I used to fuel starve horribly at, I'm able to get out there and do full 20-minute sessions with tons of hot laps. And so I'm calling it a win for my own criteria. So your mileage may vary based on your car, the fuel demands that you have, how throttle heavy you are through these corners, your local tracks, if you have a lot of, you know, left-handers or not. So, you know, but that's been my experience for what it's worth. If you have feedback, please drop a comment. If you would rather have more of a conversation, like a private DM style chat, I'm available at slothbrz on Instagram. You can hit me up there. But whatever you do, please share your experience. I'd love to hear about it. If this video helped you, I would really like to know. If you took what I did and made it better, I would really like to know, so that maybe I can improve my own system as well. I'd love to start a discussion on this stuff. So yeah, I think that's it. Good luck, and let me know how it goes, and happy tracking. And yeah, until next time, I'll see ya.